I found out my husband got his ex pregnant the same night I was planning to surprise him with the best news of our marriage. I had just landed back in Charleston 2 days early from a business conference, my heart racing with excitement instead of suspicion. In my suitcase was a small velvet box. Inside, it was a positive pregnancy test and a pair of tiny white baby socks. After 3 years of trying, of doctor visits and silent disappointments, I was finally pregnant. I couldn't wait to see Ryan's face. But when I pulled into our driveway, there were unfamiliar cars parked along the curb. When I stepped inside, there were pink balloons tied to my staircase. And when I walked into my kitchen, I saw my husband standing beside his ex-wife, his hand resting gently on her very pregnant stomach. That's when I realized the surprise wasn't mine to give anymore. My name is Ella Carter, and until that night, I believed I was living inside the kind of marriage people quietly envy. Ryan and I had been together for 9 years, married for 7. We built our life in a quiet neighborhood in Charleston, the kind with oak trees that arch over the street like they're protecting something precious. I thought we were one of those couples who had weathered the hard parts and come out stronger. We weren't perfect, no one is, but we were stable. Or at least, that's what I told myself. For the past 3 years, we had been trying to have a baby. Doctor appointments became routine. Calendar tracking replaced spontaneity. There were months when I avoided baby showers because I couldn't handle the polite smiles and pitying glances. Ryan would always squeeze my hand and whisper, "It'll happen for us." And I believed him. He blamed stress. He blamed timing. He blamed biology. He never once blamed himself. Looking back now, I wonder if guilt ever crossed his mind. Because while I was scheduling fertility consultations, he was reconnecting with Madison, his ex-wife. They had divorced years before we met. According to Ryan, it had been amicable. They were better as friends. I never felt threatened. She lived in another part of the state. Their contact seemed minimal. At least, that's what he told me. 2 months before the Seattle trip, I noticed he was on his phone more, smiling at texts, stepping outside to take calls. "Work stuff," he'd say casually. I didn't push. I trusted him. And trust, I've learned, can be the most dangerous blindfold. The week before I left for Seattle, Ryan seemed distracted. Not cold, just distant. He kissed me goodbye at the airport like he always did, told me he loved me, reminded me to call when I landed. Nothing about that goodbye hinted at what I would walk into days later. Nothing warned me that while I was presenting quarterly projections in a conference hall full of executives, my husband was preparing for fatherhood with someone else. The irony still makes my chest tighten. Because while he was planning a baby shower, I was planning to tell him we were finally having a baby too. If I had come home on Thursday like I was supposed to, I would have found out differently, maybe privately, maybe with rehearsed explanations. But life doesn't wait for convenient timing. And neither did I. When that conference ended early, I thought I was orchestrating the most beautiful surprise of our marriage. I had no idea I was walking straight into the collapse of it. I remember the exact sound my heels made on the hardwood floor when I stepped fully into the house. Too loud. Too sharp. As if the house itself were warning me. The music was soft, some kind of acoustic love song playing from the living room speakers. There was laughter, the gentle hum of conversation, the clink of glass against glass. It sounded intimate, joyful, like a celebration. For a split second, I wondered if Ryan had planned something for me. Maybe he knew. Maybe he had somehow guessed about the pregnancy and arranged something special. But then I saw the banner more clearly. Baby Carter coming this fall. Pink and gold letters. Not neutral. Not, "We'll find out together." Pink. And beneath it, a table lined with pastel gift bags. I felt my stomach tighten. Not from jealousy. From confusion. I stepped into the kitchen doorway. That's when time slowed down. Madison stood near the island, wearing a flowing cream dress that curved around a very obvious pregnancy. She looked radiant, confident, like someone being celebrated, and Ryan stood beside her. Close. Too close. His hand rested lightly on her stomach. Not awkwardly. Not like someone unsure of his role. Comfortably. Possessively. He was smiling down at her in a way I hadn't seen in years. That soft, protective smile. The room fell silent when they noticed me. I don't remember dropping my suitcase. I don't remember breathing. I just remember the way Ryan's face changed. Shock. Then guilt. Then something else. Fear. "Ella?" he said, his voice barely audible. Madison's smile disappeared instantly. Her hand instinctively covered Ryan's. I looked around the room. Ryan's parents stood near the dining table. His sister, Claire, held a champagne flute midair. Two of our neighbors stared at me like I had walked into the wrong house. Everyone knew. Everyone but me. How far along are you? I asked Madison. My voice sounded strange, calm, almost detached. She hesitated. 26 weeks. 26. 6 months. That meant this had started months ago. While I was scheduling fertility appointments, while I was crying in our bathroom over another negative test, while Ryan was telling me, "We'll get through this together," I looked at him. "Is it yours?" The question felt almost absurd. Of course it was his. His hand was still on her stomach. "Yes," he said quietly. Just one word. No denial. No scrambling for excuses. Just, yes. The simplicity of it felt crueler than any elaborate lie. "And this?" I gestured at the decorations. "Is this why there are 20 people in my living room?" Ryan swallowed. "We were going to tell you." "When?" I asked. "Soon. After the cake?" No one answered. Madison finally spoke. "Ella, I never meant for it to happen like this." I turned to her slowly. "How exactly did you mean for it to happen?" Silence again. Ryan stepped forward. "Let's go upstairs and talk." "No," I said firmly. "We're talking here." I walked further into the kitchen, close enough now to read the cake clearly. "Congratulations, Ryan and Madison." No mention of me. No attempt to soften it. It felt like I had been erased. "I leave for 5 days," I said, my voice steady but tightening, "and you turn our house into a baby shower for your ex-wife." "She's not just my ex," Ryan said defensively. "She's going to be the mother of my child." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were loud. Because they were final. I reached into my purse slowly. Everyone watched. I pulled out the velvet box. For 1 second, I considered opening it, showing them, telling him. But then, I looked at the banner again. Pink, gold, 26 weeks. And I realized something. There was no room in this story for my surprise anymore. So instead, I closed the box and slipped it back into my bag. "Congratulations," I said quietly. Ryan blinked. "Ella." "I mean it," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I hope you're very happy." His mother started to move toward me. "Sweetheart. Don't," I said gently but firmly. I picked up my suitcase. And before I walked upstairs, I added one more sentence. "You should all probably take pictures. It's not every day someone celebrates destroying their own marriage." I didn't go upstairs. Not yet. I set my suitcase by the stairs and turned back around. If they thought I was retreating quietly, they didn't know me at all. Ryan followed me into the living room. "Ella, please. Let's handle this privately." "No," I said evenly. "You made this public." The air felt heavy. No one reached for the cake. No one touched their drinks. Madison shifted uncomfortably, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. I looked directly at her. "When did this start?" She hesitated. Ryan answered instead. 6 months ago." I tilted my head slightly. "That's convenient." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means that if she's 26 weeks pregnant, this didn't begin 6 months ago." Biology doesn't work like that. The room went completely still. Madison's eyes flicked toward him. Ryan's jaw tightened. "It started before that," he admitted quietly. "How long?" I pressed. He looked at the floor. "A little over a year." A year. That meant while I was still scheduling fertility treatments. While I was cutting back on work travel because he said he missed me. While I was trying to save something that was already gone. I laughed softly, not hysterically, just disbelieving. "So, all those late nights you were working? All those weekends you were helping your parents?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Ryan's father cleared his throat. "Ella, relationships are complicated." "No," I replied, my eyes still on my husband. "They're actually very simple. You either protect them or you destroy them." Ryan took a step closer. "I didn't plan for this to happen." "You didn't plan to cheat. It just happened." I looked at Madison again. "Did it just happen for you too?" She swallowed. "We reconnected. We talked. Feelings came back. So instead of closing the door, you opened it wider." She flinched. Ryan raised his voice slightly. You weren't here, Ella. That sentence hung in the air. I wasn't here? I repeated calmly. You were always traveling, always working. Madison was going through a rough time after her breakup. We leaned on each other. You leaned on each other, I said slowly, until she ended up pregnant. It wasn't about replacing you, he insisted. I looked around at the pink decorations, the congratulatory banner, the gift table. It looks a lot like replacing. Ryan's sister finally spoke. Ella, maybe you should just give him time to explain. Explain what? I asked sharply. Explain how I was the only person in this room who didn't know my marriage was over. No one could meet my eyes. That hurt more than the pregnancy. The deception wasn't just his. It was collective. How many of you knew? I asked quietly. Silence. His mother shifted uncomfortably. We found out recently. How recently? She didn't answer. Ryan tried to regain control. This isn't helping. You're right, I said. It's not helping you. He stared at me, confused. I walked over to the dining table and picked up a wrapped baby gift. Did you pick these out together? I asked Madison. She looked ashamed. Yes. And you used my house. Ryan's voice hardened. It's my house too. No, I corrected gently. It's not. His expression faltered. I bought this house before we married, I continued. The mortgage is in my name. The deed is in my name. I saw the flicker of realization in his eyes. He hadn't expected that part of the conversation. You're not seriously thinking about divorce, he said. I held his gaze steadily. I'm not thinking about it. Madison shifted nervously. Ella, we didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me. I repeated softly. You just meant to build a new life on top of mine. Ryan reached for my arm. I stepped back. Not dramatically. Just enough. I'm not going to scream, I told him. I'm not going to throw things. I'm not going to embarrass myself. My voice grew firmer. But I am going to protect myself. His face drained of color. Ella, you've already chosen, I said quietly. Now, I get to choose too. The room was so silent I could hear the refrigerator humming. I took one last look at the decorations, at the banner, at the life I had been excluded from. Enjoy the party, I said calmly. Then I turned and walked upstairs, not to hide, but to prepare. The moment I closed the bedroom door behind me, the silence felt louder than the party downstairs. I stood in the center of the room and looked around. Our room, our bed, the framed photos from vacations, the anniversary card he had written me last year, to my forever. I almost laughed at that. I opened my suitcase slowly and pulled out the velvet box again. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Inside that box was the life I thought we were building. Inside that house downstairs was the life he had already started without me. The contrast felt surreal. But something strange happened in that moment. I didn't fall apart. I didn't scream into a pillow. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I walked to my desk and opened the bottom drawer. 3 months ago, when Ryan's behavior started to feel off, I had quietly scheduled a consultation with a family attorney. I told myself I was being paranoid. I never expected to actually use the information, but I kept her card. Patricia Collins, family law attorney, Charleston, SC. I picked up my phone and typed a simple message. It's Ella Carter. We need to move forward. I hit send. Then I opened our shared financial folder on my laptop. Mortgage statements in my name. Investment accounts primarily funded by my salary. Insurance policies structured under my coverage. Credit card statements, and that's when my breath caught. Multiple charges I didn't recognize. A maternity boutique. An obstetric clinic. Restaurant reservations on nights he claimed he was working late. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. He had funded his new life with our money. With my money. There's a specific kind of clarity that comes when emotion drains out of a situation and logic steps in. And logic told me something very simple. Ryan thought he was walking into a new beginning. He had no idea he was walking into financial reality. A knock sounded on the bedroom door. Ella, he called softly. Can I come in? No. There was a pause. Please. I walked to the door but didn't open it. You can say whatever you need to say from there. His voice sounded tired. I didn't want it to happen like this. Like what? I asked calmly. Like you being caught? That's not fair. No, I agreed. Fair would have been honesty. He exhaled sharply. I was going to tell you. When? I asked. Before or after the baby was born? Silence. You don't understand, he said finally. Madison and I, we have history. And you and I have a marriage, I replied. It's complicated. No, I said again, firm but steady. It's not. There was another long pause. What are you doing in there? He asked cautiously. Protecting myself. He sounded confused. From me? Yes. His tone changed. Ella, you're overreacting. We can work this out. We can figure out a way forward. A way forward? I repeated. Where you raise a child with your ex and I. What? Pretend it doesn't exist? He didn't answer. I opened the door then just enough to look at him. His face looked anxious now. Not guilty. Anxious. You didn't just break my trust tonight, I said quietly. You misjudged me. He frowned. What does that mean? It means you assumed I would stay. That landed. His eyes shifted. I thought you loved me, he said. I did. Then fight for us. I shook my head slowly. Love doesn't mean accepting humiliation. He stepped closer. You're being cold. No, I said evenly. I'm being careful. I walked past him and down the stairs again. Most of the guests were gone now. Madison stood near the door, her purse in hand. She avoided eye contact. Ryan's parents hovered awkwardly near the kitchen. Party's over, I said calmly. No one argued. As Madison walked toward the exit, I spoke directly to her. I hope you understand something. She looked at me, nervous. If he did this with you, he can do it to you. Her face paled slightly. Ryan snapped. That's not necessary. It's not revenge, I said. It's a pattern. When the last person left, the house fell silent. Ryan stood in the middle of the living room. What happens now? He asked quietly. I met his eyes. Now you find a lawyer. His jaw tightened. You're serious. I've never been more serious. And the house? He asked cautiously. I held his gaze without blinking. You have 30 days. The realization hit him slowly. You can't just throw me out. I don't have to, I said calmly. The court will. For the first time that night, I saw something real in his expression. Not remorse. Not heartbreak. Fear. And that's when I knew. He had underestimated me. And that was his biggest mistake. Ryan was served on a Tuesday morning. He called me 12 minutes later. 12 minutes, I remember thinking. That's how long it took for confidence to turn into panic. What is this? He demanded over the phone. Divorce papers, I replied calmly. You didn't even try to talk to me. We talked, I said. You just didn't like what I said. His breathing was uneven. You're blowing this up. We can handle this privately. We tried private, I answered. You handled it publicly. He lowered his voice. Madison is pregnant, and I am not responsible for that, I said evenly. He paused. Then came the part I expected. You're being vindictive. That word again. Vindictive would be humiliating you, I said quietly. I'm just protecting what's mine. The hearing happened faster than Ryan expected. Patricia was composed, precise, almost clinical. She presented the documents clearly. Deed in my name. Mortgage paid primarily from my accounts. Financial records showing my salary funded most of our assets. Credit card charges connected to Madison's prenatal care. Ryan's attorney tried to argue shared marital property, but Patricia leaned forward and said something that shifted the room. Your Honor, the funds used to purchase and maintain the primary residence were inherited by my client prior to marriage and documented separately. Additionally, marital assets were used without her consent to fund an extramarital relationship. Even Ryan looked stunned. He hadn't realized how thoroughly I had prepared. The judge didn't appear emotional, just factual. The residence remains the separate property of Miss Carter. Mr. Carter is granted 30 days to vacate. It felt surreal hearing it spoken aloud, not because I doubted it, but because something final had just been sealed. Outside the courtroom, Ryan caught up with me. You could have handled this differently, he muttered. I did, I said calmly. I handled it legally. You're going to regret this. I stopped walking. No, I replied softly. You are. That shut him up. 30 days. The house felt different once the ruling was official. Lighter. Ryan moved through it like a guest, not a husband. Boxes appeared in the hallway. Closets emptied. He made calls late at night, apartment inquiries, I assumed. One evening, he cornered me in the kitchen. "Rent is insane," he said. "I can't afford half of what we were paying here." "That's because you weren't paying half," I answered. He stared at me. "You know what I mean." "Yes," I said evenly. "I do." He had lived comfortably for years. Vacations. Dining out. Luxury gym memberships. And because we were married, I never kept score. Now, reality was keeping it for him. "What about Madison?" I asked one evening. "She has her own apartment," he replied defensively. "For now." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means raising a child costs more than balloons and cake." He didn't respond, and I realized something important. Ryan hadn't thought beyond the romance of it. He had imagined happiness would carry them. But happiness doesn't pay rent. The night he broke. 2 weeks before his move-out deadline, he knocked on my office door. "I need to ask you something." I looked up from my laptop. "Go ahead." His pride was visibly thinner now. "Would you consider delaying the move-out? Just a few more weeks?" "Why?" "I'm having trouble qualifying for an apartment." "On your salary?" I asked calmly. He bristled. "You don't have to say it like that." "I'm not saying it anyway," I replied. "I'm stating facts." He ran a hand over his face. "Madison and I, it's stressful." "She expected," he trailed off. "She expected the life you had here." I finished for him. He didn't deny it. "She thought you were more established financially." He looked embarrassed. "I was," he said quietly. "No," I corrected. "You were married to someone established." That truth hit harder than anything else I'd said. He sank into the chair across from me. "For years," he admitted. "I didn't realize how much you carried." I closed my laptop gently. "Ryan, I carried it because I thought we were building something together." He nodded slowly. "And now?" he asked. "Now I'm building alone." He looked at me like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. But clarity comes too late sometimes. "You're really not coming back from this," he said. "No," I answered without hesitation. He stood slowly. 30 days, I reminded him. He nodded once. And walked out. The move-out day. On the final day, I left the house early and returned in the afternoon. His car was gone. The closet was empty. The spare key lay on the kitchen counter. Next to it was a folded piece of paper. 3 words. "I'm sorry, Ella." I stared at it for a long time. Then I picked it up, tore it in half, and dropped it in the trash. Because apologies don't rebuild trust, and they don't reverse choices. That evening, I stood in the living room alone. The same room where pink balloons had once floated. The same room where my marriage had ended. And for the first time, it felt like mine again. For the first few weeks after Ryan moved out, I didn't ask about him. I didn't check social media. I didn't call mutual friends. I didn't want updates. Silence was healing. But silence never lasts long. The first crack appeared 3 months after the divorce was finalized. I was leaving my office downtown when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost didn't answer. "Hello?" There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard since that night in my kitchen. "Ella, it's Madison." For a moment, I considered hanging up. Instead, I stayed quiet. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she said carefully. "But I think you should." That sentence alone told me everything I needed to know. "What happened?" I asked evenly. She exhaled. "Ryan didn't tell you everything." I almost laughed. "That's not surprising." There was a long pause on her end. "He said you overreacted. That you pushed him out. That you made it impossible for him to fix things." I leaned against my car. "And you believed that?" "At first," she admitted softly. "But then reality hit." "Reality. It always does." She continued. "He didn't explain how much of your lifestyle came from you." "Meaning?" "Meaning I thought he owned the house. I thought the investments were his. I thought—" Her voice faltered. "I thought he was financially secure. And now?" I asked calmly. "He's not." That didn't surprise me. "Rent is behind," she continued. "Medical bills are stacking up. He said you took everything in court." "I didn't take anything that was his," I corrected. She was quiet for several seconds. "I know that now." I let the silence sit. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "He's been blaming you." I raised an eyebrow instinctively, though she couldn't see it. "For what?" "For ruining his future." for not giving him time, for embarrassing him legally. I exhaled slowly. He embarrassed himself. I see that now, she admitted. There was tension in her voice. Fear. And the baby? I asked carefully. Another pause. We're struggling, she said quietly. And he's not handling pressure well. That statement carried more weight than she probably realized. Ryan had always preferred comfort over confrontation. When things became complicated, he avoided them. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She hesitated. Because I don't think he understands consequences. Most people don't, I replied. And I don't think he understood what he lost. That one landed differently, because it wasn't about money. It was about stability, structure, partnership. I'm not calling to ask you for anything, she added quickly. I just thought you should know. Know what? That this isn't the fairy tale he imagined. I looked up at the skyline for a moment. It never is, I said quietly. The call from Ryan. 2 weeks later, he called me himself. His voice sounded different, thinner. Ella, can we talk? We've talked, I replied evenly. Just listen, okay? I didn't answer, but I didn't hang up. Madison and I are under a lot of pressure. I assumed so. I didn't think it would be like this. How did you think it would be? I asked calmly. I thought once everything was honest, things would feel lighter. I almost smiled at the irony. Honesty doesn't erase responsibility, I said. He exhaled shakily. She's overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. And that's my fault? I asked gently. No, he said quickly. I didn't realize how much you handled. There it was again. Not love. Dependence. For years, he continued, you made everything feel stable. I was stable, I corrected. And now I'm not, he admitted. That was the first honest thing he'd said in months. And you want what? I asked. He hesitated. I don't know, but I knew. He wanted comfort, security, familiarity. He wanted to rewind. You don't get to come back when reality gets hard, I said quietly. I know, he whispered. And for a second, I believed him. The final break. The real collapse came sooner than anyone expected. 4 months later, I heard through Claire, his sister, that Madison had moved out. She hadn't left dramatically. She had simply reached her limit. Arguments over money, stress over medical expenses, tension over expectations. Ryan had built a relationship on escape, not foundation. And escape rarely survives pressure. When Claire told me, she sounded uncomfortable. I thought they were happy, she said. They were excited, I corrected. Isn't that the same? No. Excitement is temporary. Responsibility isn't. That night, I walked through my house slowly. The house that once felt like a shared dream. The house that had become a battlefield. Now it was quiet. Steady. Mine. And for the first time since that night with the pink balloons, I felt something close to gratitude. Not for the betrayal, but for the clarity it forced. Because sometimes the collapse isn't destruction. It's renovation. And Ryan's fairy tale had cracked under weight. Mine was finally standing on solid ground. I thought that would be the end of it. Divorce finalized. Ryan struggling. Madison gone. Clean lines. Closed chapters. But life rarely wraps itself up that neatly. It was early autumn when I ran into Madison in person. Not at a party. Not at court. But in the cereal aisle of a grocery store on King Street. She looked different. Thinner. Tired. Less polished than the woman I had seen glowing under pink balloons months earlier. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she said quietly, "Hi." "Hi," I replied. There was no venom in my voice. No drama. Just distance. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she added. I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "About Ryan." I considered walking away. But curiosity is powerful. 5 minutes, I said. We ended up sitting at a small cafe across the street. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was steadying herself. "I owe you the truth," she began. "That's refreshing," I replied evenly. She nodded slowly. "The timeline he gave you?" It wasn't accurate. My expression didn't change. "How inaccurate?" She swallowed. "It didn't start a year ago." I leaned back in my chair. "How long?" "Almost 2 years." 2 years? That meant while I was cutting back, travel to focus on fertility treatments. While I was planning anniversary dinners. While I was rewriting my work schedule to be more present, he had already chosen someone else. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I just felt something inside me settle. Why tell me this now? I asked calmly. Because he tried to come back to you. That made my eyes sharpen. When? After Madison and I started arguing about money. He said maybe you overreacted. Maybe enough time had passed. I almost laughed. He thought time erased betrayal. He said if you'd just give him space, maybe you'd reconsider. I shook my head slowly. He doesn't understand me at all. Madison looked down. He doesn't understand accountability. That's not the same as misunderstanding, I replied. She hesitated. There's something else. I waited. He told me he felt insecure with you. Insecure? You were more successful, more financially stable. He said sometimes he felt small. I sat with that for a moment. Not because it hurt, because it made sense. Ryan didn't leave me for love. He left me for ego. Madison had admired him, impressed him, made him feel powerful, until real life demanded power he didn't have. He sabotaged what intimidated him, I said quietly. She nodded. He told me once that with you, he always felt like he had to catch up. I exhaled slowly. And instead of growing, I said, he escaped. She didn't argue. We sat in silence for a few seconds. Then she said something unexpected. You handled it better than I would have. No, I replied gently. I handled it legally. There's a difference. Before leaving, she added one last thing. He's not okay, Ella. I know. He regrets it. I'm sure he does. But regret doesn't equal repair. And it doesn't restore respect. The final meeting, the actual closure, came 3 months later. I was having dinner with a colleague at a downtown restaurant when I saw him at the bar. Ryan. Alone. He looked older, not physically aged, but diminished. He saw me too. There was hesitation in his eyes, like he wasn't sure he had the right to approach. I walked over first. Ryan. He gave a small, almost grateful nod. Ella. Up close, I noticed the changes. Less polished clothes. A cheaper watch. Tension behind his eyes. How are you? He asked quietly. I'm good. He studied me carefully. You look different. I am. He let out a humorless laugh. I thought maybe after some time. No, I said gently, cutting him off. He looked down at his glass. I was stupid. That's accurate. I thought I deserved more. You had more. He winced slightly. I didn't realize it. That's the problem, I replied. He hesitated again. I felt like I wasn't enough for you. That surprised me. Why? You made more money. You were confident. You didn't need me financially. I chose you, I said calmly. That intimidated me. There it was. The real root. He hadn't left because I was lacking. He left because I was strong. I needed someone who looked up to me, he admitted quietly. And you found that, I said. For a while, silence hung between us. I thought maybe, he began carefully, if enough time passed. No, I said again, not angry, not cold, just final. You didn't lose me because of Madison, I told him softly. You lost me because you chose dishonesty over growth. He nodded slowly. I see that now. I hope you do. I stood. He didn't try to stop me. And for the first time since that night with the balloons, I felt no anger toward him. Just clarity. Sometimes people don't destroy relationships because they're cruel. They destroy them because they're insecure. But insecurity isn't an excuse. It's a responsibility. And I was no longer willing to carry his. It's been 2 years since the night I walked into my own house and found pink balloons hanging from my staircase. 2 years since I realized my marriage had ended long before I knew it had. If you had told me back then that I would one day feel grateful for that moment, I would have thought you were cruel. But clarity can feel like cruelty before it becomes freedom. After Ryan moved out, I didn't rush to replace him. I didn't download dating apps. I didn't try to prove anything. I did something far more uncomfortable. I sat with myself. I renovated the house not because I hated the memories, but because I needed the space to reflect who I was now. The living room became lighter. The kitchen changed colors. The room that was once supposed to be a nursery became a study filled with books and natural light. I stopped building my life around being someone's wife. I built it around being Ella. Work flourished. Without emotional chaos at home, I was sharper, focused, strategic. I earned a promotion 6 months after the divorce. Not because I needed validation, but because I was finally operating at full capacity. I started traveling again. Not for conferences. For pleasure. I went to Florence alone and wandered museums without checking my phone. I drove along the Pacific Coast Highway with the windows down and no one asking when I'd be back. For the first time in years, my life felt self-directed, not negotiated. As for Ryan, I heard updates occasionally through mutual acquaintances. He moved twice in 1 year. Changed jobs. Dated briefly. Nothing lasted. Because when you build relationships to fix insecurity, they crumble under pressure. Madison had the baby, eventually a healthy little girl. Ryan sees his daughter regularly, from what I've heard. I genuinely hope he shows up for her in ways he couldn't show up for me. Children deserve stability, even if adults fail at it. The last message I ever received from him came on what would have been our 10th wedding anniversary. "I hope you're happy," he wrote. I read it. I didn't respond. Because happiness isn't something you send as a reply. It's something you build. And I had built mine without him. Here's what I understand now. Love is not enough if respect is missing. Excitement is not enough if responsibility is absent. And forgiveness does not require reconciliation. The law protected my assets, but self-respect protected my future. Walking away wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. If you ever find yourself standing in a room that no longer feels like yours emotionally, financially, or morally, understand this. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to leave quietly, and let the consequences teach the lesson. And you are allowed to build something better from the pieces. That night with the pink balloons wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the version of me who no longer accepts half-truths. And that version? She's thriving.